Secretary of DOI, Tony Babauta, in the Zoom room. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Half a day.
And they are in Washington,
Morning.
D.C. Isn't that cool? For, again, the historic inauguration. We just got done streaming about 6 hours of coverage. We'll start with you, Congressman. Just if you could, what was it like? And some of the highlights for you as you were in attendance
Well,
there.
I think, in terms of the overall environment, of course, it's very different. I've been to 4 other inaugurations, and of course, there were very few people there, so the mood was very different because of the omnipresence of the security arrangements. And I think the ratio of, guards and personnel, police personnel to the attendees was probably 10 or 15 to 1. And to see razor wire on top of fences around the Capitol was certainly kind of an ominous sign. But President Biden carried the day. He spoke to us like he's your stable, reliable uncle. Look, folks, this is what's going on. Look, we have to get united. We have to stick together. There's been some problems in the past, but we have to kind of figure out how we're going to relate to each other. And that kind of stability is like, the kind of stability and the call for unity that you experience after you've just come out of a typhoon. You're out and you're looking at your neighbors and say, okay, what are we going to do together now, from now on, as opposed to the kind of twists and turns that we were going through almost on a daily basis because of the previous occupant of the White House. And so I think we're at that stage. In terms of the environment, it's there are only a couple of thousand guests there. So you couldn't really hear, as one of the sitting there, you couldn't really hear any applause because, first of all, we were all far apart because of COVID, as well as the thing. And all you could hear was a kind of a muffled sound of, people with gloves trying to clap. Sounds very odd. Had a kind of a muffled sound to
Golf
it.
clap, golf clap.
And then we kept trying to say Viva Biden, but nobody picked up on it.
Maybe they couldn't hear you being 6 feet apart. Tony, let's take it over to you. When former Congressman Underwood talks about the post-typhoon thing, that was a pretty neat analogy. Obviously, there's going to be some healing. There's going to be some unity. How hard is it going to be for President Biden to kind of unite a country that I don't even know if they want to be united? It's very polarized. Obviously, people have very strong opinions on both sides of it. So how is he going to bring these two groups of people together in the middle? And how challenging is it going to be to do that in 4 years?
Well, I think it'll be very challenging. I don't think anyone is under any impression that the challenges that face the Biden administration are great. I think President Biden started off on the right foot, calling for unity, calling for the truth, saying that politics doesn't have to be the cause of a raging fire, and really pleading with the country to unify. We're all in this together. And Mr. Underwood's right. I mean, he's now going to be our stable leader to try to move us through all the issues that confront us today, from the pandemic to racial injustice, equality, raising the minimum wage. I know they're going to start off very strong within the first few weeks, having another stimulus package. And I know that the Democratic administration, the Biden administration, wants to put together an infrastructure package to start to try and restart this economy and rebuild the economy and recover from COVID-19. The 50-50 split in the Senate is clearly an indication that everyone needs to be able to work together to try and get us to get the country out of the hole that we're currently in. And those are just the domestic issues that we're talking about. Then you have outside the United States that the Biden administration will have to deal with and try and re-engage with our allies, show our presence around the world, which is something that has been missing, obviously, for the past 4 years. But it is a great challenge. but with President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and the message of unity, hopefully we can start getting through all these issues.
Congressman, what did you make of the no-show from 45? And I mean, it kind of really elevated former Vice President Mike Pence that he was there. So that was interesting.
Oh yeah, it made Mike Pence look like a hero and a very great human being, just by comparison. And so much in life is just based on comparison. And so if President Trump had wanted to leave on a high note, he should have attended. Instead, he wanted to leave on a kind of a sour note, like a petulant child. I'm not going to go. I'm not going. Instead, I'm going to take my 21 guns and salute myself and say goodbye to all of you. And that's really awful. But I did want to add to something that Tony said. He calls me Mr. Underwood, which is Washington speak. As a Stanford one. It's so funny every time we see each other.
Well, I wanted to call you Congressman and not former Congressman.
So he of course, Tony and I go back a long way.
Right.
But the re-engagement with the world, which Tony referred to, is really critical. It's really critical because America's leadership is at stake. And I think the most powerful line and memorable line that'll come out of the speech by President Biden was, you don't lead by the example of power. You lead by the power of your example. That places soft power and hard power and military power in kind of an appropriate relationship. He's going to rejoin the Paris Climate Accords. He's going to be signing and a bunch of he might rescind 15 executive orders by the end of the day. I don't know, but certainly all of those things are going to be evidence that we're returning to a more stable, a more predictable environment. Let's have fights the way we used to have them, not by tweeting and insulting each other.
And by using the truth and a set of facts that we can all deal with.
That is so fundamental, no artificial news, no shading the truth. Just tell the truth. I'm going to level with you folks. That's what, I'm going to let you know what's going on.
Hey, but you know what? Say what you will about President Trump, but he got us some memes, okay? We got memes because of what was that? Alternative facts? Oh man.
But President Trump was, was just someone that would have been interesting had we had him around for a month. But after a while, everybody started to just kind of be on eggshells constantly. You can't run a government that way. You can't run the United States of America that way. And so what happened is he gutted out the command structure of the military. He gutted out the State Department. The State Department is the soft power of the United States, and he gutted that out. And so now all of those, I'm sure those so-called deep state people are breathing a sigh of relief, and of course we're going to hear every person that used to work in the White House is going to have a best-selling book, tell all,
right?
And spill the beans.
Let's talk about what it means for Guam. Obviously, Democrat administration. We've got a Democrat administration, obviously here. So, are we going to see some returns on this Biden-Harris presidency?
I believe so. I'll let Tony respond to that too. Here's the thing. It's just like I said, there's going to be a third COVID relief package. Sure enough, that's what it is. And that the transportation, the infrastructure part, which will go to the Transportation Committee, large parts of it, it's going to give us an opportunity to shape that legislation. And shaping that legislation, of course, involves delegates and Nicholas, but it also involves the governor and the legislature and a whole kind of all of Team Guam approach. And if we don't have that, we're going to squander an opportunity. So that's really key. And the justice issues, when President Biden talked about racial justice, he's talking about justice issues. When they talk about statehood for the District of Columbia or statehood for Puerto Rico, it means a real vibrant conversation about the meaning of what Guam means to the US, because realistically, we're just part of that scene. We sometimes on Guam, we tend to think that Guam federal relationships is really just Guam and the federal government, but there are lots of other pieces to the puzzle, including the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico.
Tony, I wanted to
You're going to take center stage.
Right. I wanted to ask you just from the DOI perspective, right? So I felt like, and I don't know if it's just the kind of guy he was, but I felt like we had a good relationship with Doug Domenech. And so now that there's a new person coming in DOI, what does that mean for Guam and the territories and, you know, some of the asks that we may have made and will be making?
Well, I think we don't know who the incoming assistant secretary will be, but I think we can have some confidence that that the person may have a bit more experience when it deals with relationships between the federal government and the U.S. Territory. So we're hopeful for that. We keep our fingers crossed. It kind of goes back to what Mr. Underwood was talking about in your original question. What do we expect to see from a Democratic White House? And I think what you can look forward to is a lot more engagement, especially with our Democratic governor. There's a Democratic governor in Guam, American Samoa, and Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. This is not to say that there wasn't a lot of communication with the Trump White House, but I think when you have leadership speaking at that level, I think the opportunity for engagement, both from Delegate San Nicolas to Speaker Terlahi and the rest of the Democrats in the Guam legislature, and then with Governor Lilian Guerra, I think the opportunity will be great to be able to try and move some issues forward. Ultimately, you want to be able to take advantage of what a Biden administration will prioritize. So there are other issues beyond COVID, beyond the infrastructure package that will be there. I mean, you want to see that reinvestment in renewables in the territory. So you hope to have more money for that. You hope to have more money for school safety, for facilities, especially in a COVID era. And you want to be able to capitalize on what the Biden administration priorities are going to be. And I think from Governor Lilian Guerra to Delegate San Nicolas and others, Mr. Underwood, a former Democratic member of Congress. I would like to think that as a former Democratic or former Assistant Secretary who worked under a Democratic administration, we all have networks that we can reach out to try and advocate for Guam. Yes, we send a voice to we send an elected voice to Congress from Guam, but there are other voices also that can help out in that sort of advocacy for Guam and for all the other U.S. territories.
I think it's been interesting when you talk about the access that we've had during the Trump administration. I feel like we did have some access with just because the Republicans or whatever. But one thing I thought was interesting was Congressman Mike San Nicolas has kind of been a little coy and not really too partisan. And, some would have argued that, that's because we have a Republican president, so he can't really come out on either side. But I didn't see anything from him on his numerous social media accounts about the inauguration. And do we now anticipate that it would be a good look for Congressman San Nicolas to maybe come out as, more of a Democrat now that we've got a Democrat administration and kind of quit being coy about, what party he is with? And is that going to be something beneficial?
It's like when you're playing over there in the major leagues, and of course you want to be friendly to the other side, but it's competitive and it's competition. I don't know. I don't know who thinks that that's not the case, but no, the notion of being bipartisan is a good one, and but generally. Sometimes when people say they're bipartisan, they're really trying to avoid taking a position, a hard position. That's the flip side of that. And of course, the President Trump was not really soundly criticized for his connection to the Capitol, the attacks on the Capitol by the delegate. I'm kind of surprised by that. And so, you know, on the other hand, you just not to make too big a production out of it, but Delegate Stacey Plaskett from the Virgin Islands is now on Ways and Means and is also on the 8-member House team to prosecute President Trump in the impeachment trial. That's really high level. I don't think you're going to get much higher level, higher profile than that. So jumping both feet into something that it can be seen as highly partisan will also net many rewards for your constituents. So, but really, what Tony has outlined is absolutely accurate, which is Delegate St. Nicholas obviously is a Democrat and has his connections, and he's sitting on the Democratic caucus. And obviously, Governor Leon Guerrero has a series of other networks, even Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio, former Congresswoman Bordallo, Tony himself, me. We all have our networks, and we all want to put them to use for Guam if there's an openness about it in the approach, and there's a little bit of outreach to everybody. And certainly, I think both Tony and I remain open to that possibility. You know, both he and I have connections to many of these people in the Biden administration. And, you know, just by working there for all those years, I don't think, I have to say that probably the people who know the most about most of the things that are going on there and have the most connections are probably that are Democrats, that are Tony, myself, and Congresswoman Bordallo, because we've been there a long time and we had maintained relationships a long time. So there's no reason to squander them.
Well, hopefully that'd be quite a team.
I was just going to say, you know, when President Biden in his inaugural speech talked about unity, you know, politics becomes local, right? You start thinking about how politics becomes local, and really, it's been unfortunate that there hasn't been more unity when it comes to our own, and for me, for our democratic politics on Guam. Yeah. It seems to be a more divisive, and there should be a call for that type of unity. There should be work and effort put into having not just a unified message, but to be able to take advantage of the fact that there's a Democrat in the White House. I mean, we have strong Democrats with a long history, a strong network, and I think if we have a singular message or a couple of things that we want to go after, and you know, between I think Governor Leon Guerrero and Delegate St. Nicholas to try and bring to bear your tools and your resources and people that can help advocate for what Guam needs. Members of the cabinet are going to be crucial in this. Mr. Underwood served with the incoming Secretary of Health and Human Services, Xavier Becerra. I know that he has a personal relationship with Mr. Becerra. I have a one step away personal relationship with Mr. Becerra. I think the sky could be the limit. I think we need to follow President Biden's suggestion about unity, even though we need to recognize that President Biden said unity is elusive in a democracy, but it's not unachievable. And he said if enough of us come together, however, everyone can move forward. And so that's kind of the message that I took away from one of the things I took away from him.
And let me just add to that. Let me demonstrate a practical matter that's in front of the of the people of Guam. There's going to be an infrastructure bill, So there shouldn't be 3 lists of different infrastructure projects being submitted to the Biden administration. One presented by the legislature, one presented by the delegate, one presented by the governor. Now's the time now. It's not impossible for these offices to get together and say, these are the 5 major infrastructure projects we should be pursuing for Guam. And then stick to that so that it's clear that wherever the projects go and whoever the funding sources are, that you're going to find that there's unanimity on Guam for that. Picks, recommendations. Obviously, there is not much any unity right now, but picks for various, there's over 4,000 positions that go with the Biden administration, from cabinets to secretaries to board and nominations. There's 4,000 of these possibilities. The offices, again, which individual should we recommend for this? And instead of coming out with a list and say, okay, here's my list, I want you to support my list. That's just not the way it happens. That's not the call for unity.
Jim
That's a call
Espaldon for
disunity.
what was that nomination that Congressman Jim Espaldon for FSM ambassador?
Ambassador to FSM.
What? What are you? Huh? All right, guys. I'm kind of out of time, but I like the hopeful tone. We'll check in with you
That's right.
in 6 months.
Well, we're hopeful guys.
Yeah,
And
okay.
you know, Chris,
It's
you're
a
a
hopeful
hopeful guy
day.
too.
You know, I've been called worse. So again,
Chris,
Tony
hopeful Barnett.
doesn't have the same ring as malfunction, but yeah, I'll take it.
Okay.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Babauta. All right. Man, we had a calling card. That's why they're in Washington, D.C. You know, great coverage there by NBC as we were able to stream. Wow, it was like 6 hours of coverage, right, Jason?
Yeah, I believe we had our broadcast started at midnight, and then we carried, Mr. Biden actually took the oath of office at 3 a.m., roughly our time over here. And then, there was a lot of ceremony, a lot of pomp and circumstance, and a lot of tradition that he and the First Lady had to take part in. Of course, they visited the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington. Then they made this very emotional, very dramatic motorcade across the Potomac, and then heading towards 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, which he now calls his permanent residence. There was a lot of history. I mean, if you just watched it, I mean, there was a lot of stuff. If
Little tidbits, right? They're putting out.
Yeah, and actually, Glenn Lujan, who is now in his second day back teaching at Louis P. Untalan Elementary School, he was saying there were a litany of teachable moments that they can pass on to students just based on what happened today in the nation's capital.
And I mean, let's not gloss over Kamal.